All right, everybody, welcome to NorCal Sports Network. And this is the same hat that Brock Purdy's dad wears. Chat loves it when Marty Lurie comes on.
Anytime you lose a game this time of year, when you can't go backwards, it's a problem.
All right, everybody, welcome on in to NorCal Sports Network. We'll be talking some baseball tonight with the great Ned Colletti. And before we do, let us thank our sponsor of the show, Chapman Law Group. Chapman Law Group, located in Marin, licensed in California. Give Chapman Law Group a call for all your legal needs. You got a personal injury situation? Give them a call, 415-613-9483. Don't settle with an insurance company before calling Chapman Law Group, and let them know NorCal Sports Network sent you. All right, everybody, we got a treat tonight. We've got Ned Colletti joining us. Ned, welcome to the show.
Hey, Danny, good to see you. Good to see
you too.
Last time I saw you, I think the Giants were right there.
Yeah, I think it was.
They were today.
Yeah, it's rather alarming, Ned. They were 41-29. They are now, I think, 59-62. So they have lost what say they were 41. There's something like 18 and 30, roughly. Something like that.
They were 12 over now. They're like under 50. From what you just said, that's 15.
Yeah, they're three under. Let me look at the standings. I always get confused because it just keeps piling up. But they are 59-62. Arizona has actually caught them, and the Giants are now tied for third or fourth, however you want to put it. But Arizona's looks like they may surpass them permanently, and the Giants could be finishing fourth for the fourth season in a row. And that is kind of ugly after the start. Ned, what happens to a club when the vibe's really good, spring training, you start the season really good, you're tied with LA after the first game on June 13th. They beat the Dodgers and they are tied. And 2 days later, they trade for Rafael Devers, and everybody's like, whoa, what's going on in San Francisco? And it's just like the wheels fell off. Is this a matter of just something internally messed up, or is it just a lack of talent and it just caught up to them?
Well, the talent thing is obviously you got to kind of start there a little bit. There was great improvement the first 2-3 months of the season. I didn't expect them to catch LA or to hang with LA or San Diego, but you had to like what you were seeing. But the one thing about the baseball season is you can't fool it. The season is too long. And if you have any type of weakness, whether it's of character or health or ability, whatever it may be, it's going to catch you. It will catch you. You go back to, I think, the Giants won 107, 108 games a few years back, right? That was one of the most miraculous seasons I ever saw because it was a good team. Obviously, you don't win that many games if you're not a good team. Was it historically the best Giants team of all time? Because the record says it was, right?
Right.
And so, that in that particular season, they had so much. They played hard, they played smart, they did a lot of good things, and it probably their record probably surpassed their ability. But most seasons, you are who you are, and the season's going to tell you who you are. And that's kind of where it's at right now. There's no denying it. The seasons are long, and they still got a ways to go. So maybe there's something good that will happen the last 6-7 weeks. But it's been a tough month or so.
Yeah, it's the season is long. I looked at the standings the other day, all the way back on June 13th, and every team that was leading the division in the National League, except the Dodgers, they're still right there, tied at the top. But Chicago was been overtaken by Milwaukee, and then the Mets had a big lead on the Phillies, and now the Phillies have a big lead. It's there are ebbs and flows, obviously, to a 162 game season, but my contention, and you know, I hate being right on this because a lot of people were saying, well, the Giants pitching's great and the hitting is just got to pick up. If the pitching can, and I said, you know, it's going to falter to me because they don't have enough depth, is they're relying on that bullpen. The starters are going to get fatigued, and you better go out and get some starting pitching. And I mean, they need a lot. They really do. They have two good quality pitchers in Webb and Ray, and then the kid Landon Roop has been very solid. So, but he's been on the shelf. He's coming back, it looks like, but it's a little. I mean, and we knew these guys were going to falter because they were at their max innings limit. Some of these younger pitchers, and so you can't have a guy never pitch 110 innings in a season, his whole minor league, major league career, and all of a sudden expect you're going to get 150 quality innings out of the guy.
Not in the big leagues.
No.
No.
You might get 120, 30.
Even that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Because the minor leagues are not the big leagues.
Right.
And the whole process of playing at the highest level takes a toll.
Yeah.
And you just don't, do it, once a week or once every 2 weeks. It's an everyday deal. So, that's, again, the season tells you the story.
Yeah, it really is. And with this club, struggling the way it is and not being able to score runs, they've scored 5 runs in their last 5 games. And if I look at their total games in the last 5, it's pretty telling. On Saturday, they lost 4-2. Sunday, they lost 8-0. Sunday they lost 8-0. Monday they lost 4-1. Yesterday they lost 5-1, and today 11-1. So they've just no hitting. Now here, and this might be a tough question for you to give too much information on, but when you've got a team that is got 3 or 4 veterans. I shouldn't say Lee's not a veteran. It's really his first full season, but he's signed for 6 seasons, and this is year 2. So he's got 4 more seasons, about $19 million a year. He does have an opt-out after year 4. But you've got Adames for 6 more seasons after this, Chapman for 5, and Devers for 8. And if you don't get production out of those guys, this could be a disaster, right? I mean, this could be a situation where you're stuck with this for years to come.
Well, you got to think that the guys that have struggled offensively, you got to think that they're going to get better, and that they've struggled as much as they have for as long as they have. Concerning, because you're not productive, and you were signed to really provide what you typically have provided. Not more, just because you make more. Not more because you're signed longer. But you're expected to do what you've done. And when you haven't, and then when it's more than one, you got your hands full trying to fix it.
What is, in your experience with big leaguers, what's the first thing that goes? Is it bat speed when they get older?
Yeah, everything slows down. The bat speed, the ability to run your first step, that's usually telling too for a fielder. The sharpness of your pitches, if you're a pitcher, the velocity certainly. A lot of different things have just slowed. It's no different than just life yourself. I've slowed. And I'm not playing anything, but it's part of the deal. And
Yeah. I know what it was like to slow. I had a couple surgeries, one in May, one in June, and then I got rushed to the hospital and spent 6 days in the hospital in early July. Almost didn't make it. I was internally bleeding. Yeah.
I didn't know that. Jeez,
Yeah.
wow.
It was pretty touch and go there for an hour. But yeah, I barely, it's like my wife had to call paramedics and get me rushed to the ER, and my blood pressure was 70/45. I was losing blood and I didn't realize it.
Oh,
But yeah, I'm doing better now though, getting my strength back slowly but surely. But like you say, when you get a little older, it doesn't, you're just not as quick, not as sharp, and you don't recover as fast.
no.
But
With the athlete, it's the same deal.
yeah,
I'm looking at averages. As you look at Adamas hitting 223, you look at a Chapman, 229. Two guys that were really signed relatively close. I think Chapman was signed at the end of last season, in season,
right.
I think. And then
In season, right in September.
was, maybe the first of the free agents to sign. When you've got two guys like that are going to hit in the middle of your lineup,
Yeah,
and they're in the 220s, that's
yeah. Don, you were right. This is a 500 club at best. Now, when you mentioned the 21 season, they won 107 games after having 17, 18, 19, 20, 4 consecutive losing seasons from 17 through 20. Could that have been sometimes you hear the blessing in disguise. Was that fool's gold that might have been something that set the franchise back even further, because they doubled down after the 21 season, and then, Buster retired after that season, but then they brought back some of the other guys that had career years, and then that was the end. Those guys never duplicated what they did. Guys like Crawford and Belt, they just didn't duplicate those seasons. And then, 22, they're 500, 23, they're under 500, 24, they're under 500. And it looks like this year they may, unless they get hot, they're going to be right in that general area again. And yet they've never done a rebuild. You're part of the San Jose Sharks. You saw what the Sharks went through. They tried to get the cup and they just got to the finals, couldn't get it done, but they had a lot of veterans that were stars, but they got older. But they did it. I think they're doing it the right way. They tore it down and they said, okay, it's going to take a few years, but we're going to build it up. We're not going to try and taste it here to get, they, as I like to call it, Ned, they chose a lane.
Yeah. It's tough to play in both lanes. And, the NHL is different than Major League Baseball in a handful of ways, including, you can't really buy your way out of a franchise that is in need of a rebuild. You have to draft, and our amateur guys, Chris Mortensen and his group, have done tremendous work with it. And you got to draft and develop. But sometimes in baseball, you'll try to buy your way out. You won't want to go all in. It's going to take longer for your drafted players to get to the big leagues. Macklin Celebrini was drafted in July and was playing in the NHL in October. Will Smith, a little bit different because he went to college for a year. But you're not waiting 3, 4, 5, 6 years for somebody to come in and not just get there, but contribute. It takes a lot longer in baseball. So a lot of teams will say, hey, we're not going to go through all of that. And we're gonna buy our way out and go get some free agents. But in my history, I think in almost every GM's history, it's tough to get 100 cents on a dollar. It just is. Sometimes you're going to get somebody that's going to exceed expectations. You're hoping that they meet expectations. And a
Is
lot of
that
times,
limited to mostly the superstars in general, guys like Ohtani and Judge? You see them sign huge contracts, but then you see other guys like Bogarts gets a big contract and he's not really producing at that level. And you see, I mean, Trey Turner did pretty well for a while in Philly, but I mean, he's still got half of that contract left, and I don't know how, if he's going to be, he might be on Medicare by the time that thing ends. So
that's an interesting, because he's a speed guy too.
yeah.
And as we talked about a couple minutes ago, at some point in time, that's going to dissipate. That's just life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my concern with where the Giants are at, Matt Chapman will be 33 next season. He's had, he still hit the long ball last year and he still hits it occasionally, but he's pretty much a 230, 240 hitter with a lot of strikeouts in him. And then you got Adames, same type of hitter. And I think one of them has to go. I don't think you can have two guys like that in the middle of your order that strike out at tremendous rates.
Where are they going to go?
I think that's the tough thing. And I mean, you have to get, I would imagine, super creative and get your ownership on board and say, we're going to have to pay part of this contract, whoever we try and move him off to, and say, are you willing to say, he's got, Chapman's case, you got 5 years left at $25 million. Are you willing to pay half of that and just say, okay, we're going to lose this money in the last 2 years, 3 years anyway, because he's going to be 36, 37. You're not going to get the production then. So you're going to be eating money then. Why not eat it now? And while he's young and someone will want him, because he's still a viable player to a good team. The problem, in my opinion, is Matt Chapman is a, tremendous third baseman, maybe one of the best ever to play the game. But offensively, he is a role. He's a contributor. He's a piece that says, okay, but with the Giants, he's the main piece, and he's batting fourth, and he comes up constantly with runners in scoring position. And he's got 44 RBIs on the year. You can't have that.
This is the issue. This is the issue with a lot of teams, and I'm going to take the Giants out of it for a minute. But this is the issue with a lot of teams. You get desperate to sign somebody, and you sign them, and you overpay in term typically, but sometimes in dollars. And you have to ask yourself, is during the term of this contract, what's the chances of this player playing the same that the player has played? Okay. Or is what we've seen, if what's on the baseball card is the best it's ever going to be? Is he going to get better at 34, 35, 36? Unlikely. So, it's what I don't miss about the GM seat at all, because you find yourself in these situations where you feel you need to add somebody, and they sense it and they know it, and they keep moving the price tag up, and so you end up talking yourself into it, and then you look and you say, how are we going to do this? And I don't. That goes on with pretty much every team. I mean, the Dodgers are sitting there with Conforto right now for $17 million. 1 year deal, though. 1 year.
1 year deal. That's easy to get rid of.
6, 7. You can put up with almost anything for 1 year, but he hasn't hit 200.
Correct. Yeah,
so,
I missed out on that. I thought Conforto he would have a big year. I predicted he'd hit 25 home runs because he hit like 20 last year with the Giants. I thought with all that protection around him, this guy's going to have a massive year, but it just hasn't happened.
No.
I got a question from senior softball games. He says, Dan, when you get a chance, ask Ned if he's ever come across a player from the Dominican who falsified their age.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure I have. You know, that they put a lot of safeguards in about that to kind of manage that. You know, it's really, and it may be the same way today, but it was really a tough situation because you didn't always know. You didn't know a lot about the background, and most of the time, and this may sound, you know, startling to some people. If you're 18 years old and you're a Dominican player, you're probably not getting signed. It's already passed you by. We're not
Right.
signing, you know, we're not drafting people in our country until they're high school graduates, maybe 17, but about to be 18. If you're that age in a Dominican, you're not going to make it. You're done. You know, that's why they allow the 16-year-olds to be signed. So yeah, there was.
This
It,
is
it wasn't players saying that they were older. You know, like sometimes people will falsify their ID to get into a bar or something.
right. They're saying they're younger.
Yeah, they're saying, no, I'm not 18, I'm not 19, I'm not 20, I'm only 16 years old, you know?
Yeah. Well,
So,
this is what's intriguing to me, because there's a lot of players. David Sampson, former executive of the Miami Marlins, he came out and pretty much said that Albert Pujols at the time was not the age he said he was. No concrete evidence, but there's been many Dominican players who have been caught that they are 4 years, 5 years older. They find out. I think Miguel Tejada was one of them. Found out he was older than he said he was, which brings us to the question. You know, I mean, it's twofold. One, when you're younger, a guy like Juan Soto from the Dominican can make $700 million as a 26-year-old, but is anybody going to pay him that if he's really possibly 30? We don't know. It's just, and then we got Rafi Devers, who's 28. His body looks like he's in his 30s. He doesn't appear to be this young. I mean, they're just, he's got back issues. I mean, this is a problem. And you, as a GM, mentioned in one of our previous times you were on the show how tough it was in the steroid era. Is this guy on steroids or not? I have no idea. And I want to sign him. And you're dealing with people from the Dominican that, are they really their age? Where's the proof? I mean, how do you uncover that? Is there a way to uncover that?
Well, for everybody listening that thinks that they could be a GM, this is the trick to the gig. It is tough because you don't know. You know, you could be around a player for 10 years and you don't know the lifestyle, and you don't know what they're doing, what their age really is, or, you know, back before testing, if they were doing anything illegal. You know, you don't know. You can't ask. You can't accuse. You just have to take an educated guess and figure out what you're willing to gamble on, the personality and the honor of it. But that was the toughest, and that actually made the age falsification minor. Without steroids, the age falsification is a huge deal. But with the steroid issue, age falsification became secondary to what is this player doing? Is he going to test positive? Is he going to break down? Is he going to sign and then stop, and suddenly the body gets smaller and the stats get smaller? You know, I mean, it was the toughest period of time to figure stuff out like that.
Wow. Yeah, I wouldn't envy a GM in that position, because you're talking millions and millions of dollars, and it's the owner's not happy, and if the owner's not happy, you may be out of a job. I mean,
you just bring up a good point. Let me ask you this, Dan. So you brought up Chapman and Adonis as guys that, you know, you got to figure out if you're going to keep them or not, right?
Right.
Those deals aren't even a year old yet.
Correct.
So how do you go and tell the owner that, we're not even 12 months in and we got to figure out how to get this guy out of here?
That's a tough one. I think
doesn't say a lot about your judgment.
I think you got to go out there and just lay it on the line and say, look, this might have been a mistake, and do we compound it and just stick with it, or do we try and find, because I think I think Chapman would be great on a team like the Yankees, the Phillies, the Red Sox, the Dodgers. Even when Muncy, you could say, well, we'll move Muncy over to second base, put Chapman at third, and we'll put Betts back in the outfield, something to make now Chapman can bat seventh or eighth in an LA lineup, and he'll probably have one of his best years ever because he's surrounded by tons of talent. But you put him in where he's the guy, it just, and I don't even want to say it's Chapman's fault, because you're putting him in a position to say, be the guy, and you've never really been the guy. You're a complementary piece offensively. You're the leader defensively. You're that good defensively that, and I want to ask you about this because
I got to make a point though from something you're saying, if I may.
Go ahead.
Well, I think Chapman is a very good supporting player.
Mm-hmm.
I think you got 5% of the players that don't belong in the league. You got 5% of the players that are at the highest level in the league. And you got 90% that sit in the supporting cast role. And in that 90%, you have high supporting cast, semi-high, medium, a little bit less than medium, and low supporting cast. And I think one of the keys to being successful is that you don't ask somebody to do more than they're capable of doing. Because to take anybody, and I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking in general, in any sport, to ask somebody to do what they're not capable of doing doesn't work, especially when you play 162 games. It just doesn't work. And so, you gotta know that. You gotta know that ahead of time. If I'll go back to the Giants and Chapman for a minute. If he was their sixth or seventh best hitter and one of their top two defenders, yeah, you got something. Because not only have you put somebody in a spot that they're not going to necessarily be able to sustain success for a long period of time, if at all, but you also put a pressure on them that isn't going to be productive. Because anybody that signs, I'm sure that the guys you've been talking about, they know what they're getting paid. They know the trust that has been put in them, and the honor that both parties exchange to do the deals that they've done. But if you put somebody in a position in any line of work that they're not capable of really being successful in, you've missed a mark.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I'm thinking of this situation because, you're 1 year into a 6-year deal, but he's been here. This is his second full season. So you're really going to have him sign for 7 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're talking 7 seasons after age 30, which, the Atlanta Braves kind of have a philosophy where they just don't sign a lot of players to long-term contracts once they get into their early 30s. And they let guys just go. They let Max Fried go this year. They weren't going to sign him to that. And the Yankees signed him to, I think, 8 years or something of that nature. But, and as you mentioned, you're paying for past performance, and you're going to eat part of that contract, whether it's 2-3 years, whatever, you're going to eat the back end of some of that. I think it just makes perfect sense as a team that's struggling and has a lot of veterans tied up now that you just say one of these guys we need to try and move off of, if not both, and just eat the money up front now instead of eating it at the back when we know we're not going to be able to trade them and they're not going to be good their last 2 years of the contract. That's at 25 million, you're eating 50. Why not just say, why don't we pay 50 of it now to another team or 75, whatever it is, and say, take him and give us a couple prospects instead of, so they're paying him 12 million a year versus 25 million.
Or you can hope that the player gets better.
Yeah.
But that's what you expected. Or that somebody else comes up and they get to hit in a position that they're more productive in. You can do that too, but what I understand what you're saying, but I can't tell you that is an easy thing to do.
It's not an easy thing to do, but the best way to do it is to build. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid, the Dodgers had Ron Say, Bill Russell, Davey Lopes, and Steve Garvey all hit at basically with about the same time or within a year or so. And they were unbelievable teams through their 20s, but in their 30s, all of those guys, early 30s, started declining. Every one of them.
Well, that's the game. Unless you're in the steroid era, then you're going to buy yourself a couple more years.
Yeah. So I just don't understand why teams sign players that are past, 31, 32, and they sign them to these long-term deals. It just never works out. And
you got tapes of your shows?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we should go back and look about a year and a half ago or so and see if you thought that they should not sign anybody to a long-term contract.
Chapman, I was against from day one.
Or that's fine. But I'm not going to pick on one guy, but it's.
I was actually for the Adames deal. I was okay with because they didn't have a shortstop, and he was the best shortstop on the market. I thought it was too long, but again, if you got money to burn, Adames may come back. He may be able to fight back. I'm just, I don't know. I guess I'm just not sold on Matt Chapman. I've just seen too much of his career strike out, way too much. He hasn't had an RBI season over 80 in his entire career, except 2019, which was the well-known juice ball season. So for a guy that's, has a reputation of being a long ball hitter, just doesn't come through with runners in scoring position. And that's pretty clear. But I want to get to some of this area with the Giants, what they can, you got a first-year guy in Buster Posey, and he's a hero around the Bay Area. Giants fans love him. My dog's named Buster. Everybody's got a dog named Buster in the Bay Area. And yet he's in a tough situation. He took over the organization when it was, I've had word from some other big league players that have actually said, the system, the team was a mess, and it was left in a mess. And so he's got to come in, and he's trying to establish himself. How do you, as a GM, I don't know how to get, I don't know how you get out of this, because you've got 4 guys signed. I just got an email today somewhere. I'll have to look at it, but it showed the contracts of these guys that are signed. Yeah, here it is. Jung-Hoo Lee, $113 million, Chapman, $151, Adames, $182, and Devers, $250. I found it on Twitter. Now it's spread out, but how do you, obviously the great way to do it is through short-term. You did short-term contracts your first year with the Dodgers. You didn't do these long-term deals. Your owner was strapped financially, so it was like you had to figure creative ways to do this. But it seems like a lot of GMs, and I'm not just talking about Buster, but many other GMs have made this what seems to be a mistake, just going out and throwing money and hoping it works. It usually doesn't. It usually doesn't.
No, you see it a lot, and a lot of times it's somebody trying to keep, not Buster certainly, it's somebody trying to keep their job, and so they probably look at it and say, well, you know what, this is an overpay, but if this guy plays the way you expect, I may get another contract. If it doesn't, it's going to be somebody else's problem. The next GM will inherit the mess. The next, and so, you got probably a little bit of that out there too. We've, as many times as I've been on the air with you, whether it was with Larry, but way back in the day, or since you've had your own NorCal Sports Network, there's nothing better than to draft well, sign internationally well, and develop well. There's nothing better than that. Because it's the cheapest way, but also if you're doing it well, the most effective way for cost, for culture, for building something from the ground up. Now, nothing is, and I love being on your show, but not everything's done in a vacuum, Danny. And
right.
We have to look at the entire situation. You've got a beautiful ballpark. You've got a city that before the ballpark, there were a lot of great Giants fans, but there are more Giant fans since the year 2000 than there were before the year 2000. I'm going to guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Having been there during that crossover from 5 or 6 years before and 5 or 6 years after. So you've got that. People remember that. Ownership remembers that. People know where they've been. And they've known the great success that they've had. So when you look in the ballpark, and you see empty seats, when at the beginning for the first, I don't know how many years, many years, there was hardly ever a seat empty, right?
Right.
And, you'd watch a game from anywhere, and maybe those seats way down the left field line of the upper deck were empty, way down there, but everything else was packed. People everywhere. And you have the desire to get back to that. And so, again, in the NHL, you just can't go, there's no cap in baseball. There's a luxury tax, but there's no cap. So you go over. And there's a little bit more penalty than there was 10 years ago. But there's only the penalty of burning the cash, so to speak, burning through it. And so, people get that idea that, hey, if we do this, we're going to get people back in the ballpark. Look at when Devers came to San Francisco, the place was alive, right?
Right.
I saw a bunch of games there, maybe gone to one or two during that period of time, and it was like electric. In my opinion, and I don't live up there anymore, but it was like it was back in the glory days. Winning the 3 World Series where people were just you couldn't get in. It was that electricity to it. So you sign players with the hope that that's what you're going to get. Yeah.
Now you mentioned the way to build through the draft and the international signings. Obviously, you need a team, a general manager, a president of baseball ops doesn't do this by himself. He needs great scouts. He needs talent advisors. He needs farm developers. How do you go about, what did you do? Did you bring in new people, or did you just rely on the existing people you had that the Dodgers had when you took over?
Mainly relied on those who were there. Logan White was a great amateur scouting director. He did a great job, couple generations of players. His staff was good. You learn who people are. I think we talked about this when everything changed a few months ago. I think I said the most important thing is you really got to get to know your people. You got to get to know how they think, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, how they deal with adversity. I mean, there's a wide cachet of different things you got to understand. And that's the toughest thing. I mean, you got to get to that point to know, but you got to be able to trust your people with their loyalty, and you got to be able to trust them with their acumen to be the best there is. Because think about it, you got all these teams trying to win, and it's not you're not playing against the game, you're playing against other teams. And they happen to be in a division where you've got two of the better teams in the National League.
Yeah.
One of them has been pretty good for about 15 years. And so,
by the way, that's going to be one hell of a series starting Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
In LA, they're going to be tied for first place.
Back-to-back weekends.
Yeah. I'll be down in San Diego on next Thursday, the 21st. A group of us are going down there for the Giants Padres, and we'll be down there through Saturday. The Dodgers come in the next day on Friday. So as you said, back-to-back weekends. I mean, this is going to be amazing. And, right now I want to ask you about that, because it appears to me, as a baseball fan of the game for over 50 years, the Padres finally might have the edge when it comes to the bullpen. And right now the game seems to be changed. I mean, what we're seeing today, I heard a stat last night, Ned. The starting pitching for the Dodgers last year in the World Series went 3.2 innings, and the bullpen went 5.1. It's just flipped courses the way they approach a game now.
No doubt.
And so you get through 4 innings, maybe 5 at the most. The Padres have an arsenal that looks unstoppable in their bullpen. What do you got? What do you think? But then again, the Dodgers seem to always get up for the big games, and someone comes in to, hey, you're going to knock us off. They somehow step it up a notch.
Well, Dodgers are counting on their injured players getting back. That's really, I mean, you look at their deadline deals. It was really keeping in mind that, hey, we've gone through a really tough period of time with a lot of stars that have been hurt, and we're still in first place. We've weathered all that. As we start to get these guys back, Snell's pitched pretty good since he's been back, very good actually.
Yeah.
Those guys are like acquisitions. They're like a July 31st deal. So that's kind of what they're banking on. I give AJ Preller in San Diego a lot of credit. I mean, he just goes after it. Sometimes he overpays in talent, like he did for Soto. But he goes. He ain't waiting around to see what happens tomorrow. He's trying to create tomorrow. And sometimes that's easier said than done. But it ought to be a great series. The Dodgers have teetered a little bit. They've wobbled a bit, and still very, very capable. Mookie's had a tough year. Shohei's still terrific, and now pitching. Freddie's been great. Will Smith has had a really great year. May win the batting title if he gets enough plate appearances. And then Tio Hernandez. I mean, they've got a very good team, very deep team. You look at their lineup, they may have 1 or 2 spots they can be soft once in a while. But they're back to the way they were 3 or 4 years ago, where the pitchers got no way out. Hitters are going to have to get themselves out. But the bullpen, as you say, it has been taxed. It has been taxed a lot. And as you get to the end, again, you can't fool the game. You can't fool the season. So we'll see what happens down the road. And it'll be great drama.
By the way, that game right now going on down in Anaheim, 5-4. The Dodgers lead the Angels in the top of the 7th. So another close one happening right there. So that should be interesting. How that's going to be phenomenal.
Dodgers got to win that game.
Oh yeah, they'll be going into it a game down. Would they have been swept by the Angels this year if they lose?
Oh yeah,
tonight?
they're 0-5.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, see,
So
things can change, Danny. Don't be so dour. I mean, things can change.
yeah, well,
Thomas
Giants.
may hit 35 next year and hit 280, and hit
Yeah.
have 100 stakes. Everything can change.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm expecting a big giant tidal wave to hit Arizona. Okay, so we got this here from Kalba Kaminga. You were with the Giants back in '98. You were probably in that draft room. What's Ned Hall of Famer CC Sabathia from Vallejo was taking a pick after the Giants took Tony Torquato. How close were the Giants to drafting him in '98? Heard many teams were concerned about his weight.
Well, when I think back to that, I remember Sabes and I. There was a doubleheader at the Stick, and he was pitching at home, and I think my memory may be off a little bit. So if you know the facts, you can tell me it's fine. But there was a tree. I mean, it was a fence. They had a fence around the outfield. And there was a tree out in the center field, beyond the fence, and he went over that tree.
Is that at Wilson Park?
Well, it might have been. I don't remember the name of the park. That's where Vallejo played their home games.
Yeah, I played there as a 15-year-old. They had a 460-foot poke to center.
Well, it was distant.
Yeah.
And we were behind the plate, and he hit it like he hit a golf shot.
Oh my gosh.
It just, and I can't remember what the debate was, between Tony and CC, but I remember that, and I almost traded for him back in '08. We thought we had a deal. Actually, I was in San Francisco when I was talking to Cleveland, and we didn't have the $4 or $5 million it was going to take to take on the extra salary of him and Jamie Carroll and Casey Blake, and so Milwaukee got him. And if you remember, he pitched great for the Brewers after that. But yeah, he's had a great career. A lot of respect for him. Compete, big time compete.
Wow. So what's going on? I have one question here. I believe I starred from a hockey person. Let me see what was a question. Yeah, this is it here. Ned is, I don't even know how to pronounce the coach's name.
Ryan Wofreski. Yeah.
With the Sharks' generational talent, would a head coach that knows how to win the cup be better teaching this young team? Well, I don't think Ned's going to be able to answer that question.
I think Ryan's already a very good coach, very successful coach. Just won. He coached USA in the World Championships over in Stockholm, coached them to the championship, underdogs on the road, the whole thing. He's an excellent coach, and he's been successful. Boch had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Felipe, Dusty, everybody had to start somewhere. And I think he's going to be a great coach. Plus he's not 40 years old yet, I don't think. So you're talking about somebody that can relate to younger players, who understands how they learn, what you got to do. I think he's going to be a tremendous coach for a long time. So I disagree with that, that assessment.
Now, here's something I want to ask you, because in baseball, whatever sport, let's just take baseball because that's what we're dealing with. There's no, like if you wanted to go take another team's scouts, top scout, can you just say, hey, this guy's making, I don't know what they make. Let's say he makes, for argument's sake, he's making $200,000. Probably high, but I don't know. Can't you hey, this guy's known as the best scout. He's with Tampa or he's with so-and-so. Can't you basically say, hey, we'll pay you double or triple?
Can't do it.
Can't do it?
Any player under contract, any person under contract, teams have to ask permission of that club to talk to somebody.
Unless it's a promotion?
Well, even if it's a promotion, you have to ask permission.
Right. Right.
And, if you're going to promote that person to assistant GM or to GM or something, and if it's a real title, it's just not, we're going to give you a different business card, but you're going to be doing the same job.
Yeah.
Teams would generally give permission if it's a legit promotion.
Mm.
And if they can't match it, or they don't see the person in the same eyes as the team on that the person's not with. So you just can't go and take whoever you want. It's not, they sign for, they become free agents. When a contract runs out, sometimes you'll see it, but teams that, if they've offered somebody a contract and the person won't take it, and a couple of weeks after their contract elapses, they sign a nice big deal with another team. Sometimes there's investigations that take place to see if they've tampered. If they said, "Hey, you let your contract run out," and the contract will run out on October 31st. When we get to Thanksgiving, I'm going to make you a nice offer, and I'll make up for what you lose in the 3 weeks, and you get COBRA for your insurance. But we'll do that. Sometimes teams get away with that. Sometimes there's an investigation that follows.
Speaking of investigations, have you heard about this scandal in Cleveland with Clase and?
Well, I read about it. That's all I know. Yeah.
Basically, had something to do with first pitches being like a wild pitch or something. And you look at some of the pitches that he'd come in, and it was like dirt, or wouldn't be a strike or something, and they're just like right in the dirt, every one of them. I'm just like, Cleveland's cleared out his locker. I mean, we're talking about a serious potential, like being banned from the game if he's found. And this is the premier closer in the game the last few years.
Yep, not good.
Yeah, not good. All right, I'm going to ask you a question here that I'll try and do it as delicately as possible, because I know,
Danny,
I know this be tough for you, but maybe put it in terms of how you handled it. But you've got a situation in San Francisco right now where Bob Melvin is the manager. There's a lot of, it's not just me talking. This is a lot of talk starting to, filter through different media sites. Tim Kawakami, the big writer in the Bay Area, he works for the Standard now, is put out an article today about Melvin's job. The Giants are flat. They're playing uninspired baseball. They're making mental mistakes all over the place. Players are running through stop signs. They're running into outs. Their infield fly rule, they didn't know the rule. Elliot Ramos, I don't know if he didn't know the rule or he got confused. Somehow he got picked off in the infield fly. This is happening on a regular basis, and the Giants just look flat. And a lot of people are saying they got to make a change. How do you determine, maybe I'll ask it this way, how do you determine when to make that change, if you make it at all?
Well, there's a few different things I'd be thinking about. One is, before you make a change, you have to know pretty much where you're going and who you're going to go to. And you have to know, not guess, that they are going to be better than the person you're changing out. Change just for change's sake is never a good idea. Okay, even though sometimes it'll work for a minute. You have to, I would think you would, at least in my opinion, for me, I had to know where I was going to go. I had to know that there were going to be 2 or 3 people out there that I could talk to, I could get permission to talk to, that were going to fulfill the shortcomings that I had witnessed. Okay, that's the first thing. Anybody can call for somebody's dismissal but whoever calls for the dismissal in the media, in the fan base, in any sport, they don't have to have the conversation, nor do they have to pick the successor. So it's it's low-hanging fruit to be critical of somebody.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing you got to do. For me, it was, like people were I think in maybe 2013, people were, it's a long time ago now as I look back, people were clamoring that Don Mattingly was going to get fired. We had a 500 team. We had new ownership that had come in a year earlier, that he was going to get fired. And I remember some of the biggest writers in the country calling me. I remember I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, watching the Double-A team, and they were saying, you're going to make a managerial change before the Fox game on Saturday, aren't you? I said, I have no plans to do that. Well, why wouldn't you do that? You got a 500 team, and you guys are much better than that. I says, well, you know what? We've got some guys hurt, and I would do this almost on a daily basis, Dan. I would ask myself why, and I watched, I wasn't somebody that didn't go to games or didn't watch games or wasn't involved. I mean, I saw 225 games a year for 40 years.
Wow.
And so, I was immersed in it. And and this is the thing I did pretty much every day, you got your roster, you look at your players, and you ask yourself, is the effort and the thought process, am I getting 9 or 10 on a 1 to 10 scale? Because if I'm getting that, that's all I need. That tells me that the manager is doing a great job keeping guys motivated, keeping guys in the game. You're not winning, maybe the talent's shy, maybe guys are hurt, playing hurt, maybe the competition. Sometimes, you know what? You got to tip your cap to the team you're playing too. They're getting paid as well.
Right.
But all those things, if a team was playing hard, I wasn't making a move. I refused to do that. And I think shortly thereafter, I think we went like 42-8 or something. So you've got to be sure that it's the right time, and you got to be sure that you know who's going to come in and who's going to be able to fill the things that have frustrated you. If you don't know that, and I've been on with some teams earlier in my career that, the move to get rid of the manager was the first move, but there really wasn't a second move. And so you know what happens? It just gets worse.
Yeah. So in a situation, like you said, you have to have everything kind of lined up. I can't remember which manager it was. I know you had somebody lined up already. I don't know if it was Mattingly or you had Joe Torre and Mattingly.
Yeah, well, Joe let me know that he was retiring.
Oh, that's right. And then you already knew you got Don.
Donnie was a coach for us, so
you
that
got Don put in place.
Now,
in a situation, how do you keep that under wraps? Like, for example, this is my own world. This is what I'm wishing for as a Giants fan. I would love to see Yadier Molina be the Giants manager. I know he's tied with St. Louis big time, and they got Marmolay over there. But to me, he's going to be a great manager. He's going to manage the Puerto Rican team in the World Baseball Classic. He's a no-nonsense player, smart. Buster got to know him well because he played in the same era, and then he took Benji's job in 2010, his brother, when they shipped Benji off to Texas. I would think, but again, I don't like this. I don't like to see people's job, people lose their jobs. I don't get delight out of seeing people get fired, but it's a business, and it's a results oriented business. So when you're not getting the results and you're bringing a guy back, Buster exercised the option for Melvin earlier in the season, so it would quiet everything that was happening. Like, what's going on with Melvin? Is he going to be back next year? So I think he made the right move at the time, said, okay, let's put an end to this talk. But now there's talk all over the media circles in the Bay Area. It's getting louder and louder. And if you bring him back next year, you're in the same situation. He's on a lame duck contract. I mean, to me, unless you're going to sign the guy and say, okay, he's our manager for the next 3-4 years, and we're willing to do that, putting a guy on a lame duck year, it's like if they get off to a bad start, that's all the talk is going to be again. It's like, hey, what's going to happen? Fire Melvin. To me, just start out new off season. I don't know if Yachty would take the job being a lifelong Cardinal, but like I've always heard you say, you got your dream opportunity. It came one time, and it's like, I don't know if I'll ever get this opportunity again. I don't want to pass it up. It's too good to be true. There's only 30 of general managers. There's only 30 managerial jobs. That's my thing. And I know a lot of people like that idea because they think Yachty will be a tremendous manager. And I think that's what this team needs, a young guy that's just going to not take any crap from players who are not putting out. How do you go about doing that secretly? Can you do it secretly where you say, hey, can we get Yadier's permission before you even start the process of saying I'm going to make a change? How do you do that how do you keep that under wraps?
Well, it doesn't matter what the topic is. If you can't trust your people to keep things quiet, you got the wrong people. So my inner circle was always respectful with that. Otherwise, they weren't in the circle. So you can keep a lot of things quiet. Again, it's not done in a vacuum. And nobody knows the conversations that I'll use Molina in this case, since you did, that he's had with the Cardinals. That he may be the manager in waiting.
Right.
That, in some point in time, you're going to manage a club. Don't get anxious. You don't need it. Or maybe they said, maybe nobody's even talked about it. Or maybe they said, you know what, if, do I have a chance to manage this team one day? We're not sure. Okay. Well, then if somebody does come calling, you're probably going to get permission to go. So, again, it's not done in a vacuum. Every situation has got its own fingerprint to it. It's got its own uniqueness to it. And, you can find out a little bit through the underground, so to speak, but, maybe, in this case, somebody high up in the Cardinals organization and you say in conversation, hey, what are your plans with Molina? And maybe you gain some information. But again, it's not done in a vacuum. There's none of these paths that go exactly the same way. Okay, they're all unique, and that's you got to understand that, and you got to do your homework and know who you're talking with and how honorable they are. How much do they know? It's like I've said many times. A GM, president of baseball ops, whatever the title, the person that oversees the entire operation, you have to scout everybody. You have to know everybody in your organization, and you got to scout everybody on the outside, not just the players, the other GMs, the other owners, the other managers, the other coaches. You got to understand everybody if you're going to really make educated decisions on anything that involves people. So, again, I go back to what I said, 10 months ago, 11 months ago. The biggest job for a new GM is really understanding who the people are. Understanding how they think and how they react and what they do. Without that, you're taking guesses or maybe educated guesses, but you're going to make a mistake at some point in time. And you may make a mistake by knowing everybody too. This is a mistake-filled business as much as anything. You're making out 7 out of 10 times, they'll build a statue out front. Right. If you're a doctor and you make a mistake 7 out of 10 times and your patients are expiring, your license is going away.
Yeah.
Baseball, they're going to make a statue of you. So,
yeah, that's now when you hire a manager, your first hire was Don Mattingly.
no,
And
my first hire was Grady Little, and then Joe.
oh, that's right. You had Grady Little from Boston. That's right. And then you had Mattingly.
Joe.
Now,
then I had Joe. Then I had Mattingly.
Yeah, that's right. Now neither. I don't think Grady he didn't have managerial experience, did he?
Oh yeah.
Did he? I mean, as a big leaguer, was he a big league manager before?
For a team called the Boston Red Sox.
Okay, what am I saying? I just said that Boston. That's right. I was thinking he came from Boston. All of a sudden, I was thinking he was a coach, but that's right. He was a manager. Now, Mattingly, I know, did not have manager, and then he later went on to manage after the Dodgers, the Marlins. But what constitutes hiring a guy the first time without managerial experience? What do you actually look for in a manager I
had the benefit of having Donnie as a coach for a few years for Joe.
Right.
And I had the benefit of Joe. And when I interviewed Joe, I always gave the manager the choice of coaches. He can pick the coaches. I got the right of refusal. I'm not gonna put somebody in there the manager doesn't want. The manager's gonna hire them all. There might be somebody that I say, I don't think this coach will fit what we're trying to do. Find another one. But I wasn't putting my quote my guy in that room. And Joe had two requests. One was Larry Bowe, who I'd known my whole career, going back to my Cub days in the early 80s, and the other was Don Mattingly, who I had heard great things about before I needed to know. This is another part of the world that people don't really think too much about. I'll tell you two quick stories. One was Dallas Green was my first boss, GM. He got let go. He ended up managing the Yankees during a down period for the franchise. I went to visit Dallas and his coaching staff, including Billy Connors and Lee Elia, and sitting in Milwaukee about 1 o'clock talking to the coaches, and walks Don Mattingly, the first baseman. And they look at me and they go, you see that guy right there? He's the hardest working guy I've ever been around. This guy he's ultra talented. Don Manning's a Hall of Fame player if he doesn't get injured. And so I knew, I heard that way before I was going to be a general manager, way before I got to San Francisco. And then in San Francisco, Dave Rigetti, a dear friend, and he was our pitching coach when I was in San Francisco. And we're watching a game of the week or something on a Saturday. We're playing at night, and Don is coaching for Joe. And he says, this guy's really something. He's really special. So I know when Joe said, I want Donnie as a coach, I said, sure. And then I watched him work. And I've known many great coaches, and the Giants coaching staff that was there for the World Series were as good a staff as I've ever been around. A couple of them had changed since I had left. Flan came in, but your Ronnie Wotuses, your Dave Rigettis, on and on, just great coaches, and Mark Gardner, Billy Hayes, they were terrific. So when I hear the thing about Donnie, I'm thinking, well, this is the right guy to coach. And then I watch his work ethic, and nobody ever worked harder. And talking about the back of the baseball card, this guy was going to the Hall of Fame if he didn't hurt his back. So I knew him well enough to know the work ethic. I knew that he was never going to take a shortcut. I knew that he was going to try to get better every single day. And that meant a lot. I also knew he knew the team. He knew the players. He knew the personalities. And I also knew that if he needed Joe, when Joe retired or went to the commissioner's office, that Joe would be willing to help him and willing to give him some wisdom from time to time. I knew that our relationship was good enough that we were gonna respectfully disagree from time to time, and nobody was gonna take it personal, and we were gonna get to the right answer, which is something that Sabes and I did in a different relationship. So I knew all that, And I've always tried. I just saw him the other day. The Blue Jays were in LA, and I visited with him on Sunday. I'm ultra honored and respect him so much, and you just kind of know. Let's go back in Giants history. And then Donnie did manage. He was going to get the job. He got the job, and then he went to the fall league. And if I'm not mistaken, there's another guy in Giants history who's going to the Hall of Fame in a not too distant future, I believe, who had also only managed in the fall league.
Right.
And he came to the Giants, and Dusty Baker. So you sometimes you just know because they've been around, they've paid attention. You've seen their work ethic. You've seen how their mind works. And you just know, hey, you got to give them the opportunity. Same thing with Ryan and the Sharks. He was an assistant coach. So, you saw the work ethic. You saw how Ryan's mind worked. And, and so when the opening occurred, you say, well, he's the guy. He fits. Does he have, 10 Stanley Cups or 10 World Series championships? No, but nobody does until they start to do it.
Right. That's right.
Boats, as much as he's revered, and another guy going to the Hall of Fame. Before he started managing San Diego, he hadn't managed in the big leagues either.
Right.
Nobody starts with a 10-year record without having day one.
Yep. By the way, down in Anaheim, I'm watching this game on my phone here. Bases loaded for the Angels, 1 out. Rengifo just struck out swinging. So there's
probably
2
on a
outs.
pitch out of the zone.
Yeah, it was actually inside corner, but the play that made the game, they had first and second.
What's the score? Out. You got to give us the score.
5-4 LA Dodgers. LA
Okay.
Dodgers. LA Angels. I can't handle that. They're the California Angels to me. But now we've got who's up to the plate here. It looks like Logan O'Hoppe. Is that O'Hoppe? I think so. But 1-0 count, bases loaded. First and second, nobody out. They bunted, and Freeman, they bunted it to the right side instead of the third base line. Freeman got it, turned and fired to third base. Betts was covering third, and it was like this close. I thought they were going to review it, but they didn't. It was bang, bang. They got Trout out at third. So game's on the line right now. If the Angels put across 2, then it'll go to the 9th with the Angels in the lead here. But this is a 1-1 count, and they got this.
No play-by-play, Danny. I'm going to go watch the game.
Okay.
It's about time.
All right. Yeah, we're almost done here, guys. But I will say this. They got a guy named Henriquez. I don't know who that is. It looks like he's a guy that they called up from maybe OKC, Oklahoma City, their AAA team. So he's in the game right now for the Dodgers. And okay. Well, but we've reached our 9:30. I told Ned we'll go to about 9:30 tonight, guys. So we're going to end it here. But we definitely love having you on the show, Ned. You're always a wealth of knowledge and entertainment. So we appreciate you being here.
Take care of yourself.
A little bit lower there. So, uh-oh. Wow. We may have a different team than the Dodgers on top tomorrow night when they start Friday night.
You're not going to tell us what happened?
Oh, I didn't know you wanted me to. He just got a base hit to left center, drove in 2 runs. It's now 6-5 Angels still batting in the bottom of the 8th. Play at the plate, it was close for the go-ahead run, but he got under the tag, and nice throw. Oh, yeah, he got under it. He beat it. So 6-5.
All right, Danny.
Still going, but we'll thanks, Ned. We'll see you another time. And for everybody else, thanks for watching. We will be back Friday night, probably around 10 o'clock after Giants take on the Tampa Bay Rays. So everybody have a great night. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out. We really do appreciate it. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you Friday night. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.